The air in the closed courtroom was thick with smoke, where every look, every breath held an invisible judgment. Will sat upright, the light from the window falling on his face, highlighting the strange calm of a young man who had just crossed the line of fear. Before him stood Bill, the man who had once made the legal world wary, and beside him were the icy eyes of those who did not believe that a child could make a difference. But Will did not say much. He placed a small stack of papers on the table, in which was the co-parenting plan he had written all night, short, tight, and full of humanity. It was not a legal petition, but a plea for faith. When the judge read it, the room fell silent. He did not defend himself, did not attack Luna, but simply asked that the child should grow up in love, not revenge. Bill looked at his son, a flash of pride in his eyes. In that moment, he saw a shadow of himself before his ambition, and fear clouded his vision. Will made him question his treatment of Luna, woman he had once considered a threat, but now a broken soul begging to see her child. He had thought he was right to strike first, to take away her every opportunity, because he believed that a woman who had done wrong could not be a good mother. But Will had shaken that belief. His eyes looked at him not with blame, but with questions of justice, of humanity. The hearing ended in silence. The judge nodded slightly, ordering the case to be reviewed in the direction Will had proposed. The room seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, but as soon as the door closed, an undercurrent rose. Luna stepped out of the pew, her face pale, her hair tousled as if a storm were raging around her. She stopped in the hallway, seeing Bill and Will standing side by side, a picture too perfect, too out of reach. In that moment, something inside Luna snapped. She rushed toward them, tears streaming down her face, her words cutting through the air like knives. She said they were the ones who had sent her to the brink, that if it weren't for Bill taking away her chances, if it weren't for Will becoming a living testament to her loss, she wouldn't be left teetering between madness and sanity. She screamed that she wouldn't let the baby, her only remaining blood, fall into their hands. Luna's voice echoed down the hallway, bouncing off the cold stone walls, stopping even the court staff. Will stood still, his breath caught. He'd never seen such raw pain. Bill wanted to step forward, to stop her, but he couldn't. Any explanation would only deepen the wound. The people around her began to talk. Cameras flashed, and the image of Luna, the woman out of control, her hair loose, her voice hoarse from tears, spread like a smear. All the goodwill Will had managed to build in the courtroom threatened to crumble in seconds. Bill saw it, and his face twisted into a mixture of anger and pity. But inside, what really tormented him was not the fear of losing points, but the guilt. He had pushed Luna to the limit. He knew it, and he hated himself for knowing it and remaining silent. When the court staff intervened, Luna collapsed to the floor of the hallway. Her sobs were hoarse, like the desperate flapping of wings of a wounded bird. She looked at Will one last time, her eyes burning, but there was no hatred in them, only despair. Then she was taken away, a trail of tears like blood on cold stone. Bill stood there, his hands clenched into fists, his head bowed. He heard the judge say to the clerk at the end of the hallway, "She'll need a psychological evaluation." The words hit him like a hammer. He knew what the outcome would be. They would conclude that Luna was unfit to be a mother, and thus, everything would be settled. But would that really be justice? That night, Luna was held in an interrogation room, the cold white fluorescent light illuminating her haggard face. She still had handcuffs on her hands, but what really bound her was fear. She looked into the two-way mirror in front of her, knowing that Bill was watching from the other side. She wanted to scream, to smash the glass, to tear apart the disguise of those who thought they were good people. But all she could do was gasp, whispering the name of one person, Lee, the woman who had saved her from the darkness once, the only person who didn't look at her with contempt. Luna begged to see Lee, and when the door opened, her eyes sparkled with a fragile hope. Lee stood there, calm, still the demeanor of a doctor accustomed to seeing the line between life and death. But something in Lee's eyes stirred as she watched Luna kneel, begging to be saved from prison, from judgment, from oblivion. Lee knew Luna had hurt many people, that she had lied, that she had abused trust. But now she was not an enemy, but a desperate mother. Outside the room, Bill looked through the glass, his eyes wavering. He couldn't hear what they were saying, but from the way Luna held Lee's hand, he could feel her pleading. Will stood beside her, his face pale, unsure whether to be happy or afraid. He didn't want Luna to go to jail, but he couldn't let her regain custody if it meant the child would grow up in uncertainty. Both father and daughter stood still, like two helpless witnesses to a tragedy that was repeating itself, where love and guilt were mixed into one nameless thing. Lee stepped out, her expression unreadable. Bill asked, but she just looked at him, her eyes full of worry. She had believed that someone like Luna didn't deserve forgiveness, but now, seeing her completely broken, Lee wasn't so sure anymore, because in those eyes, she saw herself, the woman who had lost her humanity while trying to hold on to what she believed was right. Lee left without another word. Bill watched, knowing that the final decision was in her hands. If Lee testified, Luna could be released, at least temporarily. If not, Luna would disappear into the silence of the legal system, like a ghost buried by prejudice. The night gradually fell, and rain began to fall. In the cold cell, Luna sat by the small window, listening to the rain hitting the bars. She thought about the child, about the future taken away, about the pain that was slowly eating away at her reason. A drop of rain slid across the bars, reflecting the dim light, exactly like the tears she had just swallowed. Elsewhere, Bill sat alone in the car, looking out into the darkness, where the streetlights cast long streaks. Will was asleep, his head resting on his shoulder, unconsciously whispering his mother's name. Bill touched his daughter's hair, feeling both pity and fear. He had won the trial, but perhaps he had lost the game of conscience. Lee was still awake. She stood in front of the office window, looking at Luna's file. Each page was a verdict, each word a full stop. But between those lines, she saw the face of the young woman begging for a do-over. These had echoed her own words from years ago. No one deserves to be thrown away forever. Those words had saved a patient's life, but now, if applied to Luna, would they save anyone nor just hurt another innocent person? Her hand trembled as she held the pen. The sky gradually brightened. A black car left the prison. No one knew who was inside. Bill received the call at dawn, his face tense. Will woke up, looked at his father, waiting. Bill said nothing, just looked into the distance. Hadley signed Luna's bail. Will the woman who once collapsed have a second chance? Or will that chance become the beginning of a new disaster? In the gray sky, the last raindrop falls on the car window, sliding down like a trace of a soul finding its way back to the human world. Somewhere a baby's cry echoes, mingling with the distant thunder, vague and haunting. Perhaps that child will grow up with two bloodlines, one of forgiveness and one of sin. And if fate forces a choice, which of them will dare to bear the price of humanity? The sky above Los Angeles was covered in thick clouds, and the afternoon light filtered through the glass of the Forrester Creations headquarters, reflecting on Steffi's tense face. She entered like a warrior returning from battle, cold, proud, but deep down, a storm that refused to rest. She had just finished a fierce confrontation with Luna, a young woman who had dared to challenge the power of the entire Forrester family with tears, ambition, and secrets that had never been revealed. For Steffi, it was not just a battle of fashion or brand, but a battle of survival, where each decision could plunge the family empire into the abyss or save it from being swallowed by those lurking behind the scenes. She walked through the hallway where the image of her father, Ridge, hung in a yellow light. Everything in the building breeds tradition, but Steffi understands that what keeps Forrester going is not legacy, but ruthlessness wrapped in elegance. Luna has struck at her weak spot, family. Luna openly criticizes the way Forrester runs things, denouncing her decisions in the new campaign as hypocritical, heartless art. Steffi doesn't respond with words, she counters with actions. In the conference room, she presents a bold plan, a completely new collection, named Silence, inspired by the chaos Luna creates. Those designs are not just fashion products, but a declaration of power, a warning to anyone who dares to challenge her position. But behind the spotlight, cracks are beginning to spread. The meeting between Steffi and the board of directors drags Ridge and Brooke into a spiral of conflict. Ridge thought she was letting her emotions dictate her strategy, that the Silence collection was a personal declaration of war, that it would make the company look like a weak bully. Brooke, instinctively protective of Ridge, took his side, and the Forrester family split once again became the focus. Steffi didn't speak, but her gaze was enough to freeze the air in the room. She didn't need to be understood. She just needed to win. Outside, the media was boiling. News of Steffi and Luna's clash was all over the newspapers. Sensational headlines appeared like knives, cutting into the perfect image that Forrester had worked so hard to build. But Steffi knew how to turn pain into a weapon. She had the media team release the first image of Silence, a tight black dress with a high neckline, the model's mouth covered with a silver strip, as if Silence had become a declaration. The fashion world exploded. Social media was flooded with comments, some praising, some criticizing, but all of them mentioned one name, Forrester. In the quiet of her office, Steffi looked out the glass window at the city fading into dusk. She thought of Luna, who was crumbling outside, and of her parents, who were arguing over her choice to survive. She wondered, in this game of power, is there ever room for humanity? Or is it all an illusion, woven of fabric and false beliefs? She remembered Ridge's eyes, proud and afraid, and realized he could no longer control himself. His generation created this empire with art, and she was protecting it with coldness. That night, in her apartment, Steffi sat alone in front of the screen, Ray watching the press conference online. Millions of views, hundreds of thousands of comments, and among them, the most prominent line was, "Steffi makes art scary." She didn't smile, just leaned slightly, sipping her wine. In the mirror, she saw a woman who was no longer the Steffi of her innocent years, but a warrior who carried both glory and darkness. Out there, Luna was in despair. People said that Luna had been cut by other brands, that she was about to leave the city. But Steffi understood. Someone like Luna never disappears. They wait to return, like the ghost of the mistakes we made. The next morning, an anonymous letter arrived at Forrester's office. No sender, only the line, "Silence is also a form of sin." She read it, showing no emotion, but a feeling of unease rose in her heart. She doesn't believe in coincidences. In this world, everything is intentional. Meanwhile, inside information leaks, the original design for Silence is circulating online even before it's officially announced. Bill Spencer appears on the front page of Eye on Fashion with the headline, "Who's choking Forrester from within?" Steffi is plunged into a new crisis. She suspects a betrayal, perhaps from Ridge's group or Eric's, or worse, from the people she thought were loyal. Brooke tries to dissuade her, arguing that Steffi is getting too deep into a spiral of revenge. But for Steffi, backing down means being wiped out. She tightens her communication strategy, restructures the entire team, and enacts an internal security policy that's even harsher than Eric's. To the press, Forrester is at his peak, but inside, a quiet civil war is spreading. Meanwhile, Ridge is straddling both sides. He understood why Steffi acted, but he was worried that she was losing her true self. Brooke saw it and feared that Steffi's pride would consume her. In the closed meeting, when the lights were dimmed, Ridge sat alone, his eyes fixed on Eric's old painting, a symbol of a time of pure art. He understood that everything had changed. Since Forrester became a global empire, art had become just an excuse for power struggles. And Steffi, the daughter he once believed was the light, had now become the sharpest blade in the hands of fate. Outside the building, reporters were still surrounding. They did not know that behind that bright light, a crack was spreading. Luna, in a small rented room in the suburbs, turned on the TV and saw Steffi's image on the television. Her eyes were full of hatred and pain. She could not bear it when the person who had destroyed her was praised as a queen. And when she opened her laptop, the screen showed a sketch of Forrester's new dress, the stolen design. Luna smiled, the light in her eyes cold as knives. Meanwhile, Steffi had received the news. The Silence collection had been unexpectedly copied and shown at an underground show in Paris, just a day before its official announcement. The media called it the leak of the century. She stood frozen in front of the screen, feeling the betrayal cut through her heart like a knife. Someone in the company had betrayed her. That evening, she went to the conference room, where the lights were shining on the half-finished dress models. The wind blew the curtains, and in the silence, she heard footsteps in the hallway, light steady, then gone. She looked around, only to see the large mirror reflecting her face, cold and unfamiliar. Her shadow melted into the darkness, and in that moment, Steffi realized that what she was fighting to protect might be the very thing that was destroying her every day. She wondered, in a world where silence has a price, who really has the right to speak? Or is silence, like the dress in Silence, a confession of all, of artists, of liars, and of those who think they are heroes?